Our next company to present is Acasti Pharma, and that is a company that develops novel omega-3 phospholipids for therapeutic uses. Phospholipids are vital for all cell processes. Acasti's products fight heart disease as well as degenerative, arthritic, circulatory, digestive, and brain diseases. Representing Acasti is Dr. Harlan Waxel. He is its Executive Vice President.
Thank you. It's great to be here this morning representing Acasti. Just before I start, I want to point out the Safe Harbor forward-looking statement, which should cover the things that I'm going to be speaking about today. Acasti is a biopharmaceutical company. We're a Canadian-based company, and we work in the area of cardiovascular disease, specifically in cardiometabolic disorders. And what we're developing is an omega-3 phospholipid. This is a little different than other fish oils that you've heard about. This is not a fish oil. It comes from something called krill. Acasti is a company that is a spin-out from Neptune Bioresources. Neptune is a company that is also Canadian-based. They are a producer of Neptune krill oil. It's a base compound that we use to go ahead and produce our pharmaceutical-grade quality material. We were spun out in 2008, and we are listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange and went public there in 2011. We have an exclusive license from Neptune on cardiovascular use of the Neptune krill oil. In addition to that, we have full access to the manufacturing and intellectual property of Neptune. Krill is a small crustacean. It looks like a little shrimp. It's the most abundant marine biomass in the world. It's in all the oceans. We get it from Antarctica, and it's a very rich source of omega-3, specifically of omega-3 phospholipid. Just to quickly distinguish the two, fish oil has omega-3 as well. Its primary use is, again, in areas of cardiovascular disease. It is primarily ethyl ester, which is very different than what we have. And the phospholipid gives it a lot of different components and characteristics. It's used primarily to address this very large cardiovascular, cardiometabolic market. We believe that our omega-3 phospholipid is different than the others because of its terrific absorption, its lack of any side effects at all, its broad cardiovascular disease potential, its ability to be given in a very low dose, and as a result of all of these things, it has great market potential. There are a lot of risk factors associated with cardiovascular disease. We're focusing on the lipid component of that, and there are a number of drugs that have been put together already that address some parts of this market. For example, the statins, which are about a $35 billion market, work in the area of LDL, of lowering the bad cholesterol in individuals. And there have been a host of other drugs that are being developed or have tried to be developed that address various aspects of the lipid profile. There's really only one family of drugs that's useful at all in the area of lowering triglycerides, and that's the omega-3s. And that's the area that we're focusing on as our primary indication for the work that we're doing. Capri is our product candidate. As I mentioned, it's a phospholipid omega-3 where our omega-3 is covalently bound naturally to phospholipid. We've really generated a bit of data early on that's been very enticing, and it's what we've used as our basis for moving forward and making our pharmaceutical form. And that data showed, like all omega-3s, the ability of our drug to dramatically lower triglycerides in individuals who had elevations of triglycerides, hypertriglyceridemia. But what was most striking in the work that we did in the past was we also found that we had a pronounced impact on other aspects of the lipid profile, including LDL, by lowering LDL, the bad cholesterol in individuals, and some elevations of the HDL as well. And when used in combination with statins, we had an additive impact on the statins. There was no deleterious impact at all when we went ahead and combined this in individuals who were already on statin therapy. We have, beyond Capri, our pharmaceutical drug, we also have a medical food that recently went on sale in the U.S. through physicians under physician supervision. The great thing about this, while we're doing our clinical studies with our pharmaceutical-grade drug, it gives us an opportunity to work with clinicians and even do a little bit of data mining to see how this drug is doing. So I'm going to just show you 3 cases. These are anecdotal cases. It's not part of a clinical study. It's part of the medical food and how it's been used. And they're not select cases. They're the only cases that we've gotten to date since this drug has just been distributed in the U.S. Yeah, the first one is a woman who had some abnormalities in her lipid profile and was put on a statin, had a good response from the statin, but as you can note in this, her LDL to HDL ratio wasn't good enough. It was still worse than 2 to 1, and you really want to get it down to at least 2 to 1. This individual was put on anemia, our medical food, and what I like to say is that this had an impact that resulted in a normalization of the entire lipid profile. It not only impacted triglycerides as you'd expect, but it also caused a lowering, a 35% decrease in LDL, and an improvement in the LDL to HDL ratio. This is a case of an individual who had a severe dyslipidemia, was put on a fibrate, and then was put on, for obvious reasons, onto our drug because he didn't have the improvement that was necessary. Again, a dramatic normalization of the lipid profile with not only a change in triglycerides, but a dramatic improvement in LDL, a 60% decrease in LDL, and a better than 2 to 1 ratio of LDL to HDL. And the third case is an individual that I like best. It's a statin intolerant, an unmet medical need. About 11-12% of the population cannot tolerate statins. Here's an individual who had an abnormal ratio of LDL to HDL, a modestly elevated triglycerides, was put on anemia, and again had a normalization of lipid profile. I only point these 3 cases out, they're the only ones I have, but it really points to what I believe will be the benefit of our drug, which is far beyond the benefit you see with other omega-3s. We are going aggressively forward in our clinical aspect of getting this towards approval. We're using Canada as our step-off point for doing our initial phase 2 studies and plan with that data to enter into the U.S. market by initiating phase 3 studies, hopefully towards the end of 2012. The studies we're doing are all those necessary for us to get into the U.S. IND, namely we're doing pharmacokinetic work, and we're doing 2 large phase 2 studies. The first is an open label study in a patient population that has hypertriglyceridemia. That, in my opinion, is the low-hanging fruit of what we're doing. Omega-3s work in elevation of triglycerides. Ours is no different. In that way, we have a pronounced impact on triglycerides. I believe we're going to have a further impact in other aspects of the lipid profile. Importantly, this is an open-label study. We started enrollment last year. We should be fully enrolled at the beginning of around the middle of the first quarter of this year, with data in the spring of this year. And that data will be extremely critical to us in being able to point out the benefits not only in triglycerides, but in other aspects of the lipid profile. You might want to note that the drug is being used at a very low concentration of 0.5 to 2 grams per day per patient, and this is markedly lower than Lovesa or other drugs that are out there and used in this same type of arena. We believe our drug is so readily absorbed that we get great potency as a result of that. The second study that we're doing, it's a large phase 2 clinical trial. It's randomized, placebo-controlled. It's also underway. It should be enrolled sometime around the middle of this year, with data towards the end of this year. These 2 studies, in combination with the pharmacokinetic work, will set up our basis for going into the U.S. and initiating phase 3 clinical studies, we hope in the U.S. towards the end of this year, beginning of 2013. There are a number of drugs that are out there already. Lovesa is the only one that is already on the market from a prescription point of view, but there are other ones being developed in the omega-3 arena. They're all fish oils. One of them is a drug by Amarin. Amarin is moving into this marketplace and should be trying to get approval for their indication of hypertriglyceridemia sometime this year. We believe we're going to be different than any of these omega-3s because of the absorption of the drug and because of the breadth of the cardiovascular profile we see on lipids. We have a very strong patent estate. We were recently issued a composition of matter for any phospholipid omega-3, whether it's marine or naturally occurring. We also have use patents for cardiovascular disease and process patents as well. So we have a strong estate in this area, and we're very, very pleased about this. And it's a very long-lived one. It will go well into 2025 and beyond. The company, as I mentioned, is traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange. We have about 80 million shares outstanding. Our price is right now around $1.25, so we've got a valuation of about $95 million. We have plenty of cash on hand to do the studies that we're working on. We've got $6.5 million, which will easily get us through the phase 2 studies that I talked about. Our plan is to utilize the credibility of the data that we're creating in our phase 2 program to hopefully get a listing in the U.S., and that's one of our goals that we have sometime during the course of this year. I am one of the new people on this company. We have a very strong management team. The founder of the company is Henry Harlan. Tina Sampralis is the president of the company, and today I'm joined by Xavier Harlan, who's the CFO of the company. So thank you very much for having me here today, and I think you're going to hear some wonderful things about Acasti during the course of this year as we go ahead and complete our phase 2 studies. Thank you.